demographic calming initiative in the Dolomites. Every Wednesday along the summer period, it was forbidden to go by car on the famous bus routes of the Dolomites, and it was really interesting to see how the behavior change became real. So people started to occupy the pass roads where normally thousands of cars are going through. Meanwhile, the knowledge transfer, well, we saw that we needed a clear communication, which is still something where we have to learn and to increase. That one thing is the behavioral change, but on the other hand, we need a clear communication strategy supporting the knowledge transfer and supporting even more the behavioral change itself. Focusing on the tourism supply, again, differentiating between quality and quantity level. So clear, we have to support product, process, and market innovation. Yeah, at the moment, what we can see is a dramatic situation looking to the tourism industry, and I guess that it's not only about supporting product, process, and market innovation, but this different crisis, all in all, will increase the speed of innovation based on destroying current situations partially, and on the other hand, creating something new based on Schumpeter. We know the theory in a very, I think, very good way. On a quantity level, what we can say from South Tyrol is that we started to identify limits to growth of the accommodation facilities. As colleagues from Spain, we did it in a similar way. We now politically, on a political level, created a kind of moratoria. We created maximum capacities and started to, based on our studies, based on the observatory, based on the monitoring, and based on, last but not least, on the INSTO project, even to create limits to grow and to, let me say, to define a strategy how to discuss these limits of growth with the population and obviously with the tourism providers. So this will remain very important challenges for us. This is another example. Anna Scuttari was part of a project group creating a kind of sustainability award of the Bolzano Bozen Hotel Fair, where STOST, so the South Tyrolian Observatory for Sustainable Tourism, defines the scientific evaluation criteria to rank the hotels. And now I hang on to Anna. I give the floor to Anna. She will tell you about the current status of our INSTO project in South Tyrol, Italy.
Thank you very much. Let me just start by reflecting together about the role of measurement and the role of the observatories, using, as Harald said, the example of our South Tyrolean case. We understand us actually as a kind of instrument to support what we would define or call adaptive management circle. We know even this morning it was highlighted many times that sustainability is not about achieving a final state, steady state, but much more, it's about a process where many different stakeholders are involved, they play their part, and we really feel the responsibility of supporting them in any phase of the transformation towards more sustainable tourism products, offers, and also behaviors of guests. So what can we do? What have we learned that we can do? But on the one hand, what we tried to do was to support the planning phase. So basically, we decided together with our stakeholders which kind of issues were the most important one, not only based on the standards of UN WTO we saw this morning, but also based on our specific necessities. I think it was Yukon this morning that mentioned also non-mandatory issue areas. So the ones you choose because it's a very specific need of the destination. And that's what we call scoping issues. So we defined new issues based on many interviews, more or less 26 interviews we did at the beginning of our journey in 2018. We also set priorities. Well, I would like to highlight when it comes to scoping issues, it's a mutual understanding and knowledge transfer, because on the one hand, we had new issues taken from our destination. On the other hand, we brought issues from the global understanding of sustainability to our destination. For instance, in the case of gender equality was can be mentioned. So it was not common sense in our destination to consider gender equality as part of sustainability, of the sustainability discourse. And through the use of standards, for instance, the SDGs, we were able to transfer this to the local level. On the other hand, we understand our role as the one of setting priorities. So giving a highlight to the most urgent or relevant issues to take into consideration at the local level. To offer classification schemes, because once we collect data and transform them into relevant information, we also need to treat not all the municipalities or parts of our regions in the same way. So we need to start differentiating based on the specific features of the subunits, let's say subunits at geographical level. On the other hand, we should not just classify, but we think we should provide a vision for the future. We should be the ones that also based on this link with UNWTO can transfer a new vision for the development of tourism and can also transfer the learnings from other observatories, from other destinations that might have had similar experiences. For instance, in our destination, there is an attempt and a very successful path towards certification schemes, and not only hotels, but also entire destinations are applying for the GSCC certification. So trying to make a bridge and to suggest and to give contacts to the destinations in order to make them learn from other destinations all over the world was, I think, very important. On the other hand, something we are not doing right now, but we should do, I think, is we should offer the policymakers the possibility to simulate the effects of possible policies. So we should be able to inform them about the possible effects of their policies based on indicators as well. We don't see ourselves as pretty much involved in the implementation of policies. That's why in doing, we just hand over to policymakers, to the industry, although as the example of the previous award show has shown, we can always play a part also in the implementation of sustainability. When we see our role again is in the check phase. So in the moment where we again and again monitor the progress towards more sustainable situations and developments. So on the one hand, we see ourselves as key in assessing impacts of different policies and also impacts of different behaviors. In monitoring positive change, that's also a crucial aspect. And also in the identification of trends at local level and maybe also megatrends at global level to highlight the long-term development of the destination, maybe using time series. So we decided to start our data collection from 2008, and now we have more or less, well, quite almost more than 10 years of data collected. And I think every time we see our time series, we can interpret them as a very precious information to understand the dynamics of development of the destination. Of course, even at local level, we can check the performance through benchmarking, so through comparing the results among sub-regions or different regions of or different parts of the same region. So all this is the support for, again, for an action or basically for a reaction of policymakers to improve the already implemented policies and to act again and to plan new actions. That's where we see our role. And just to bring an example, not to keep it so abstract, I'll try to offer you an overview of what we did in the field of mobility. This is for us a non-mandatory issue area. So an issue area we decided to introduce based on the dialogue with our stakeholders, because our region is a very mountainous region, and the issue of traffic is quite perceived at local level. And of course, it has an effect also on the environment and on the emissions. So what we do? On the one hand, we tried to identify the key issue of traffic and mobility at local level. Here you can see the mandatory issue areas by UNWTO, and the ones in green are the ones we added on. So we decided to treat because we believed they were important for us. And as you can see, mobility was one of those. But what was the exact issue in mobility? We're not a destination that is dependent on air transport. We are quite dependent on car transport. Our main markets are very close markets. So the Italian market and the German market. And 9 out of 10 tourists came in by car. That is the main issue for us, which means a lot of traffic, congestion in a high season, and of course also emissions, noise, and other negative effects. So once we identified our issue, we started defining the right indicators. And here I would like to highlight the fact that we managed to consider the indicators and to divide the indicators based on what we call DPSIR. This is not an invention of us, it's the driver pressure state impact response framework, also adopted by the European Environmental Agency. And why is this framework so important? Because it helps us to understand whether an indicator is an indicator of impact or whether it already shows a transformation, a reaction of the destination. For instance, when it comes to the first one, you see here, estimated car-related CO2 equivalent emissions from inbound tourism. That's an estimation we made based on coefficients and based on many different data sources. Well, that's an indicator for an impact. But on the other hand, we do also have indicators that show a transformation going on. For instance, if we pick the ones below, we have mobile cards and different types of destination cards that are basically given almost for free to tourists and that tourists use. We also have another indicator, the use of cable cars by season, in order to show whether the use in summer is increasing. So it's showing a transformation towards a different way of using cable cars because, of course, of climate change and of the possibly reduced use in the winter. Finally, the second big transformation in mobility is, of course, electrification. And we decided to monitor another indicator of response, the presence of charging stations for e-mobility. And you see a map on the right hand. So sometimes we measure impacts, sometimes we try also to already highlight the progress made up by the destination. And one thing I would like to highlight here also is in this report, in the report of this year, we tried also to make an effort and compare the pre-pandemic phase. You always see the data for 2019 and the post-pandemic phase. And the variations, so the percentage changes we always considered are two. On the one hand, how the trend was before the pandemic, and on the other hand, how it was after or during the pandemic, better said. Let's pick this indicator. So we can see, or maybe it's very small for you, but I can tell you, from 2012 to 2019, we had an increase of 258% in the activation and a similar increase in the use of destination cards. That means cards that enable the use of public transport, okay? So, and avoid, of course, the use of the private car. While when the pandemic started, we had a decrease in 44.7% in the activation, and in 41% in the use. So we see definitely also the transformation or the change that the pandemic itself has brought about. And this kind of data, the preparation of data, and also the use of different timely time frames to highlight the trends are really very important in our opinion. We did also kind of a lot of pilot projects regarding mobility. On the one hand, we monitored through sample surveys the different use of car during the pandemic and before the pandemic. And you see, while in 2013, to move around within the destination, so after having arrived, we had a 55% of tourists that use their car. That means all the others were relying on public transport. While during the pandemic in 2020, this percentage, this share increased a lot. So there's a negative effect we can prove from the pandemic on the use of public transport. On the other hand, we also try to understand the perception of a traffic load by locals, because we know that there is a specific figure that that is the number of cars or the use of cars, but there's also perceptual aspects related to mobility. And we were interested in knowing at local level how people perceive the traffic load, how locals perceive the traffic load. And here you can see the evaluation of locals of a very small area in our region. The sample survey was developed together with the DMO, with the local DMO, IDM, who's listening, I think, and I thank you for being here, Emanuela. And we had the possibility to highlight the local effect of this transport. Finally, with global partnerships, we developed a wonderful analysis. It was 2019 when we did it, to assess the accessibility of hiking trails by means of public transport. So again, another very specific question to answer with very specific data. So we had a partner, Esri, as a partner, the support of UNWTO, and of course also the support of local hiking associations. So again, the partnerships play a wonderful and big role. So to sum up the outcomes of our reflection for today, what kind of role do we see for observatories after these 4 years of experience? Well, we see that observatories should define on the one hand, but on the other hand should also take the lead, or better said, co-lead, when it comes to shape the new tourism ecosystem. So they should really try to have an influence on the way the governance system is oriented, and they should try at least to provide and to be quick in providing the right evidence for the right problems. So on the one hand, they define the right problems or the problems that are urgent, as I said before, but on the other hand, they should be able to respond in a very quick and precise way to the needs of the policymakers that would like to act to improve the system itself. So you can see many of our roles here again. So transforming data into relevant information, visualize the data the right way. So we understood from the first that it's not enough to provide 40 graphs of our indicators. We need to transform that graphs into relevant information for our stakeholders. Knowledge exchange, the evaluation of the performance. Sometimes it's quite hard to see whether an indicator is performing well or not so well. Scenario setting and networking, the role of partnerships I mentioned before. And on the other hand, be able to identify trends based on the long-term monitoring of data. What are the challenges and opportunities for us? And here I have to cite another observatory that is listening to us and that took an initiative for a scientific reflection on evidence-based sustainable tourism. That's the Observatory of Western Australia, that started this reflection about the connection between knowledge production and knowledge consumption. So there's a big gap between knowledge production and knowledge consumption when it comes to sustainable tourism. Not only because there's not always a wonderful connection between those that provide the data and those that use those data for policy making, but also because there's a lot of knowledge we don't have in the way we should transmit our data to policymakers. And maybe we sometimes are not enough quick or enough effective to respond to the needs of those that should consume our knowledge. So the way we format our outputs, the way we update, the speed of our update, the regular monitoring, and also the decision what kind of indicators should have priority and should be so detailed and provided on a local scale. These are just some of the questions that arise and that keep giving us some new challenges for the future, because we believe that a transformation can always and only happen if we need or if we can mind and close those gaps as soon as possible. Otherwise, we provide evidence, but it's not useful for transformation. That's the challenge we all have, and I hope together we'll find ways to close those gaps. Thank you very much.